Hi, it's Dr. Feinstein. Good evening. Another entry to Hasidic Nurses Notes. And today is the 11th day or 12th day of the month of Av. So going forward, it's also the 28th, 26th day of July. So that doesn't change much about the presentation. A couple days away from the holiday, we had Tisha B'Av, which commemorated, you can say that, or a remembrance of the destruction of the two great temples in Jerusalem before the Common Era, great tragedies. But we try to look at to say that there are a lot of predictions, prophecies that were made regarding that, which indicate that this will be a time when Mashiach comes and we'll have the rebuilding of the third great temple in Jerusalem. And with that in mind, considering that I kind of make this a focus for Noahide, not exclusive though, that remember that Noahide, the son-in-laws of Noah, as far as an enforced entity and a recognized group, my understanding is only occurs when we have the great temple in Jerusalem, which indicates that we have the great Sanhedrin, the great Jewish court, and that's when these laws can be enforced. We have membership cards at that time, and until that time, it's something we do quite voluntarily, but I think everybody sees the necessity for it. And again, why do I make this focus with Noahide? I was thinking making this statement at the end, but I'm going to say it now, that Noahites in many ways are sort of veterans to on the whole religion in the United States. I could probably say that for other countries as well. And the Jews are here really within a generation or two, with the freedoms for Jews to practice their faith, to be admitted to occupations and trades, education. It's not a blanket thing. There's still some problems in sparse places, but nevertheless, um, the Noachites are, I would say, experienced citizens of the worldly matters that Jews are now facing. Fortunately, Jews have let's say, a system of ethics and morals and conduct in relationship with God, which is thousands of years old. So it's not just we're novices, but we're trying to take our codes and our ways and incorporate it and utilize properly the freedoms and the opportunities that are granted in this age and especially in this country, the great country of the United States. So that in mind, this is one of the reasons why I feel so strongly about the Noahide movement. Yes, it's a mitzvah. Rabbi Lubavitch has emphasized are getting people involved, not just casually. And but it's like anything else, which we think is important for ourselves. We have to realize that it's important for the world and to recognize that. So therefore, I recognize that, and with the Noachites, the concept of it, and the people I've met, I didn't grow up in a Jewish area, and many good experiences that I had with people who were not Jewish. So again, this is why one of the reasons I have to make this emphasis on Noachide. I think it's absolutely necessary for the world at this era. Maybe God didn't. Well, I'm not going to say why it wasn't so fully recognized years back, many years back, but nevertheless, this is the era for it. It says in the Pirkei Avos, the ethics of the father, that we shouldn't reject anything or disregard anybody because everything has its place and every person has its time. And I certainly will feel that this is the time for the Noachites. So going forward, or actually going backwards, the last thing I mentioned was the importance of children. So I'll break that down into two major categories. As one is sort of, I guess, a negative kind of outlook that all the forces and organizations that exist that seemingly represent evil may well do that, but nevertheless, it's not just an organization, or it's not just one evil person. Certainly, there we've had them, but these are basically on the organizational level. A country, a business, or any other a government that's made up of people, individuals. It's not just an incorporated organization with a tax number and so forth and a website. It's individuals, and individuals get involved with these organizations for different reasons. Some they're the founding fathers of it. Some they're investors. Some stockholders. But whatever it is, it consists of people. And these people didn't just step into the organization or into the world as a middle-aged person with this type of personality or value system, which could seem to be detrimental to the world. They were once children. They were born to women and husbands and wives. So we have to remember that wherever they may be and however we judge it, um, yes, there's some genetic inherent properties, but many of the things is their education from, as you say, family, environment, experiences, formal education systems is contributory to them be where they are at this time. So therefore, we have to really pay attention to the children, not like patronly and be nice to children, nice to pets, and so not to compare, but that we have to go beyond that, recognize that these will be parents, and they were the people that can who influence our lives were also children at one time, and so there's a growing up process, and this is kind of what a big factor in Judaism, Noahide, and let's say the other religions. The theology is the development of a child, hopefully for the good. And what's the good? The good is what God deems as good in His ways. So going forward from that, I said there was two reasons. One is also if we don't bring up these children properly, and that's a whole topic, that then it's a detriment to the society, and we're part of that society, and our children are part of that society, and whatever the rules of society they are, that because of there is some there's mercy, there's kindness, but sometimes people can bend the rules intentionally or unintentionally with a good motive or a selfish motive, but nevertheless, some of the rules uh, get bent. So another reason for this education and paying attention to the children is to maintain the integrity of society, and that's to pay attention to children. I mean, we see this as helpless, and we can control them up to a certain of these young ages, but they began to develop their education and their views and outlooks, and we'll say programs of conduct. And before you know it, there's adults and they're in charge, and we're going to them. So again, the emphasis on children is not just for the be nice to children; it's to be nice to ourselves in this world, which God has created for the benefit of mankind, and mankind to come to recognize the benefits and the love of God and the fear of God which we need to have. So going forward, I remember, as I mentioned, I didn't grow up religious and a very sparse background of Jewish philosophy and Jewish law, and went to public schools. And I remember in college they had a course called Child Development and Family Relations. And I think there was also one courtship and marriage. So you say, I mean, these are courses, you need courses for this. Does it depend on the human nature and what your parents told you, what your friends told you. But these are critical matters because we're talking about the integrity of a family, the family relationship. I remember when I graduated from college and I was working, I was in mid early 20s, that I went to a program I saw advertised, um, dealing with the problems of the world. I can't remember the exact subject, it was so long, the title. But basically, when it came down to it, and it was a rabbi. Um, I don't know his background at that time because I wasn't really that paying that much attention to it. But he said, critical issue is the family. I mean, what about the bomb? What about the price of gold? And your degree, I call it your education, aren't these critical issues? And it's the family. And I think this can trace back to what I said earlier about raising children, and raising children goes hand in hand with the integrity of the marriage. So anybody has experience with religion, so to say, we use that term, realizes that lots of emphasis on marriage and the raising of children. With the advent of secular education, I think, making a living and health, medicine, uh, literature, arts. I don't think that exact topic or that focus on subject of family relations, raising children, was part of the main intent of the university. It could be wrong. I was not in the faculties, but certainly we know that God and His ways and its Torah and mitzvahs certainly put a great emphasis on that, and not just prayer, not just ritual, which are, say, for the Jews, kosher, Shabbos. Um, these rituals are essential. They release energies in the world, and for the mitzvahs are given either to the Noachite or for the Jews. They have a tremendous influence. But we call it a kind of a spiritual category. And then we have the material, worldly categories and conduct between man and man, as is pretty much exemplified with the Noahide 7 laws of Noah. And as I mentioned before, that the Rebbe, Lubavitcher Rebbe said, there is, if you're looking for a line where the spiritual meets the physical, the material, there really is no line. It's all under the same category, say under God. So with a little religion, um, I'm going to, rather than like last week, I gave a section, explain a section of the Torah, the details behind it. So I'm basically going to go into to women. Not that I'm an expert, but there are some things that are just clearly stand out, or they taught in the Jewish education. So we have the first woman is Eve, we call Chava, and she unfortunately got into the situation with the forbidden fruit. I'm trying to say which one it was. And what happened was that she was influenced by the snake, even though she was given instructions by her husband Adam, not to eat from it. But the snake, the tradition has, she said, "Why don't you eat from this?" And she said, We're not supposed to eat from it, nor we're not supposed to touch it. So guess she was putting up a fence, not to even get near it, which is a Jewish practice to protect the core mitzvah. So the snake pushed her against the tree, and nothing happened to her. So he said, just like it's not a problem to touch it, it's not going to be a problem to eat it. So it makes sense to her. So the question comes, where'd she get the idea not to touch it? So again, it could have been spontaneous to protect the mitzvah. And some lore is that Autumn, knowing her that she was curious, um, she needed a little more stronger warning, and he decided that don't touch it and don't eat it. So he gave her too much information, which led to a downfall. And this is one view, and we have to take it seriously. But again, the Torah gets down to human nature, it gets down to street level, and how we conduct ourselves in this world that God created. Nevertheless, uh, Eve raised two sons or three sons, and unfortunately, one killed the other, and they had another son, Chase, and he became really the progenitor of the rest of the generations. So she was a mother, and she was important. So there is, I'll go forward with other women, and we have Sarah, who was Abraham's wife. We call Sarah Abraham, and when they went down to Egypt, there was a famine. They went down to Egypt, and Abraham noticed that she was really beautiful, and he was concerned that what would happen if the people would see her, and what happened to him. So he hid her, but they found her. I guess the customs agents, the safe, what is it called? Public safety. So and they said, well, this is a prize that she really should be for Pharaoh, the king. And she played. She said she and Abraham came up with a story that they were brothers and sisters, and actually they were related, closely related. And so this would prevent them from killing him because they still had, I guess, the Noahide code not to murder. So, or not to take a married woman. So I guess they figured murder was okay if they didn't take the married woman. So here she's the sister in their eyes, take her to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh couldn't get near her. God plagued him, and the tradition is one translation is that through the word of Sarah, he became afflicted. She had that much power in that one translation. So this prevented any problems, and actually they walked out in pretty good shape once Pharaoh recognized whom he was dealing with. And on top of it, she had a child at a very old age, way beyond the age of childbearing. And she was able to nurse the child despite what people were ridiculing her. She thought the child was from another man, but and she was not capable of raising a child, but she did. Going forward, we have his two sons of Abraham. Actually, Abraham and Sarah had one son, and it took a while to have that son. So while they were waiting, came up the idea to have Hagar, our maidservant, become a wife for Abraham so Sarah could raise a child. So, this is not a small thing for a woman to bring another woman into the home. Um, there's a term for the second wife, which the first wife uses, which is not necessarily say a complimentary term. It's not foul or anything like that, but for a woman to have another woman with a husband, even though she condoned it, it was still a sacrifice for herself because she wanted her husband to be and herself to raise children for the future of the world, be fruitful and multiply. So a sacrifice from her, a great sacrifice. But it came down after a while that she saw that Ishmael was a very bad influence for Isaac. And she told Abraham that Isaac, not a, she told that Ishmael had to go. And Hashem backed it up and told Abraham to follow Sarah. So again, Hashem, held her in great great stead. So going further, we have Isaac married Rivka, or Rebecca, and she too had problems with conception. She had finally had two children, and one turned out to be a real saint, and the other one turned out to be the opposite. Although the one that turned out to be opposite, and by the way, that's Esau, and the saint was Isaac. Esau was very clever, and he was able to make Avram think that he was really a dedicated son, and he really was a dedicated son to Abraham. But the rest of his life was the opposite. But Abraham had no clue. But Rivka, being the mother and being around the house and seeing it much goes on, where the husband's involved with the studies and his business and learning ritual, she saw the truth. And again, she took it upon herself to have Isaac come in and get the blessing from Abraham that Abraham meant for Esau, who was the firstborn, and technically should have received it, although he had sold that right to Isaac earlier in the story. And the details not they don't have to be contrived. It's pretty clear, that if you know the section. But in other words, Isaac was a oh, so something like my story straight. But Yaakov was this the other son. It was Esau and Yaakov. So Rivka had Isaac go and get the blessing, and she contrived a scheme, and she backed it up, and Yaakov was nervous about it because he would be deceiving his father in a way. And Rivka said, "I take it upon myself." So here we have another outstanding mother, and I mean, I guess somebody sooner or later runs into the geographic movies, wildlife, and you see in some of the tremendous sacrifice of the mothers, with the animals. We should differentiate, but nevertheless, what a mother will do to protect a child. And we must remember that the outstanding nature of a woman being a mother. Going forward, we have Rachel, who became the wife of Jacob or Yaakov. And there's a whole story with that. As most you know, she had a sister. She was older, and their father, although he said that he would give her, Yaakov or Jacob, Rachel for a wife if he tended his flocks for many years, but he made a switch. And he said, after he was challenged with it, he said, "In our country, you don't give the youngest before the oldest." So, in order to get this done, he had to have some compliance from Rachel. Otherwise, she could have blown the whole cover. And she didn't, so she wouldn't embarrass her sister. And as a result, she had again, competition for her husband. Fortunately, she died at an early age, but she still had two sons. So again, a woman makes a sacrifice for the welfare, not of just her husband, but her people, the Jewish people, and other sure mothers have done it for others as well. So I'm trying to present this picture, and I have more examples where has occurred throughout history. A lady named Yocheved. She was a daughter of Levi, and she eventually married a person named Kahas, Amram. And Avram, and this was a time when the nation took it upon themselves not to have children because the Egyptians were drowning the young boys, and so it was too dangerous to have a child for the sake of the child. And but the the older sister of Moses, I guess the daughter of Yocheved, said, "What are you doing? You can't. You have to go and go forward because we must keep our line, our family, our nation alive." And so Yocheved took a risk as well. And Miriam, who took Moses when he was a baby in the little ark down to the Nile to save him because the Egyptians were looking for him, she risked her life as well. She even went to Pharaoh's daughter when Moses wouldn't nurse, and she said, "Let me get a Hebrew lady who can be a nurse for him." So I'm going to stop at this point, but there's many more to demonstrate the incredible importance of women and the roles of mothers and foundations of the family. I really hate to stop this line of biblical or Torah history because so many other women deserve credit. But the point I want to make is that we have different roles, husbands and wives. And marriage, I remember when I was young in, say, junior high school or even younger, but somebody got hurt or somebody was offended or some situation disappointed. The phrase was, "Don't worry, it'll get better before you get married." And you often hear that. So here, marriage was like something was expected to be done. It happened. I mean, at that time, it was either out of high school or this person was going to go to college. Um, Dating wasn't so casual. People were going out with each other. They figured this is probably maybe the marital relationship. I mean, we know better that the young loves, the love social. Um, but many people in that time, in my time, the ones who were dating in high school, they married. And marriage, so let's bring this to like business administration. There are some things in college which are quite useful on basic concepts. Maybe like you could say common sense could figure it out, but they lay it out in a way that you didn't realize that there are steps to normal day, everyday living. And one is called the planning process. And it's, it's renamed and reused other areas, but I got it in a business administration course or a modified course like that. It was in healthcare administration. And it's basically you assess the situation you're in and see if it needs to be revised. One of the things you do is what is the goal? It's incredibly important to have a goal, or you call it a mission statement or a purpose. And everything then builds around that. Sometimes I've seen it that people stop in a business and say, wait, what are we here for? What's the point of this business? Are we really in the mentality that this was developed for? And I've seen business programs for customer relationships and getting really related. I was getting recognized for um, outstanding leadership, and that goal part came up repeatedly. So then you have a goal, and then when you have a goal, you say, "How do we get to that goal?" And that's basically the plan, making a plan, something which is going to get us to the goal. Check my notes here, what's going to get us to the goal. But usually it involves objectives. In other words, I want to get to a certain goal in my life. That means to obtain it, I have to accomplish certain things at and on a timetable. I mean, if you want to be an athlete, then you have to get yourself in condition. And top physical condition for some, you have to learn the game. So you have the season coming up and you want to be a certain athlete, then you have to start preparing yourself. And these objectives, conditioning, learn the game, self-discipline, um, and so forth. So let's use marriage. And I believe marriage was considered a goal. Person gets married, and from there they build on. There's obviously children, and I remember watching one program. It's real irrelevant. It was a family program, but you need for the children, and the person starts to work, get a job, take responsibilities, and no longer a student. And with a family, I mean, oftentimes you see the husbands were in those days the breadwinners financially, and the women would get involved with community service organizations. And how many rewards for women who were outstanding leaders, fundraisers, community efforts, charity. So the society was built around that marriage, starting with the marriage. And part in getting to marriage, objectives are to be a presentable person, healthy person, have an education or for, I would say, to make a livelihood, and being a social person. You go up in high school, you can be with the guys in sports and all the other activities that go with that. But a social life, how relate to someone who's the opposite sex, a different nature. Although there came a point where, it was the unisex revolution. I remember working in a hospital emergency room. I was religious at that time and working at night. And an Orthodox Hasidic couple came in the area we were at. They weren't a lot of them, but they came in with a child and dressed as I think maybe you're familiar with. And this in the late 70s, the time of let's say, the unisex revolution, as far as dress and other things, long hair. And the doctor who was working that night at that time, they did moonlighting. Doctors who were in residency programs during the day would make a couple extra bucks and become an emergency room doctor at night. It's not really done too much now because emergency medicine is so developed and so extensive. I'm sure there's doctors that can handle it and do, but it depends where you are. But after this couple left, he was from a totally different background than these people. He wasn't Jewish. So I don't know why I asked him. I mean, it was a long time ago, but I said, "What did you think of this couple?" And again, he was a psychiatry resident. So he said, "Well, at least the child's going to grow up knowing who's the mother and who's the father." That was unsolicited. And the psychiatry resident, although psychiatry seemed to like open the doors to many other relationship, but this is what he said. So again, the marriage uh, essential goal has become changed. I graduated from college in 1968, and before that time, almost everybody who was going to graduate, by the time they graduated, had a girlfriend, a um, fiance, and got married soon after college. That was before my year. My year, some did that, and some got engaged and broke the engagement. Some got married and broke the marriage, and some just chose not to get married at all. So I believe I saw it was, a time change. Remember, I saw in high school that just about everybody who graduated high school got married. I was working in a steel mill and my college summers, and one summer it was the railroad. I was a railroad track repair, and for the railroad, it was a very big steel mill and it had extensive um, railroad system. And the foreman in my where I worked, the district where I worked, different districts and different crews, different teams, different foremen. So they would tell me that this foreman, as soon as he got a new guy, remember this was back in the 60s, late 60s, he said as soon as he got a new guy, he did everything he could to get him married. So, because he wanted him to show up to work every day and settle down, you know, get the high school steam out of him. And as a matter of fact, that they said that oftentimes they would try to route the paycheck to the wives before the husbands could spend it on other things. So the beginning of the transition, and the next year at university, there were a lot of restrictions as far as mingling, in the dormitory, who could visit with fraternities, and what areas, and whatever, and things began breaking down. And with that, as I look back, I saw that marriage was being unseated from the goal, and some of the objectives seem to become the goal. How good you can look, physical fitness and everything that goes with that, how well you dress, fashion and styles, um, how sociable, you could be, and dating became more of a social status of dating success. And I think, well, let's put it this way, it came with an indication of social adaptability or success and making money. I mean, making money before was to support the family on the whole, but now making money um, was the main objective or goal, and how much you can make and what you can buy, what you can drive, and so on and so forth. So again, the transition from marriage leads to a questionable situation about raising children. I'm going to stop now because I think it's a time limit, and I'll try to continue this another time. Thank you so much for being with me. Have a great week.